Hello, and welcome to Catholicism in the Car. My name is Parker Zerbal. Today I want to continue our conversation on aesthetics or beauty, but I want to take a more practical turn. Some may consider this also a political turn. And I want to talk about the state of the church today, the Catholic Church, as it regards beauty. And unfortunately, I think this podcast will hover around the questions of beauty in the liturgy. And I say unfortunately because I do truly think that the problems the Catholic Church has today in their liturgical worship should have and could have been avoided. A few months back, I read through the first document that was promulgated by the Second Vatican Council, and it is the Constitution on the Liturgy, which is named Sacrosanctum Concilium, meaning basically this Holy Council. So it's usually the title of an ecclesiastical document is the first words of that document. So Sacrosanctum Concilium, meaning this sacred council. And they go on in that document to talk about the liturgy and the reforms that they're hoping to achieve. They talk about things like, allowance for the use of the vernacular, although they do stress very clearly that Latin should be retained as the main language of the liturgy. They stress things like in liturgical music, Gregorian chant should be given pride of place, should have the first place. And second to that would be the more Baroque styles of polyphony and things of that nature. And that the organ, if musical instruments are to be used during the liturgy, the organ should have pride of place. Now, as many of you may well know, these two main points in particular have really fallen by the wayside in the modern church. And this really is a disobedience to the council. Now, most of these things, most of these liturgical changes, actually all of these liturgical changes, were not promulgated by the council itself. They were promulgated by a commission headed up by, I believe he was a cardinal, maybe an archbishop, named Annibale Bugnini. And this commission was created by Pope Paul VI, who is now canonized. But just because he's canonized doesn't mean he didn't do things wrong on prudential matters and things of that nature. I'm not accusing him of sin. I'm not accusing him of any moral defects. I am accusing him, or at least certainly those under his watch, of prudential defects. And these things culminated in what we now know as the Novus Ordo Missae, the New Order of the Mass. Now, there are many people who will claim that these debates about the liturgy, and they are very hot debates. They are often highly emotional debates, because people have emotional connections to the liturgy, and that's good. We should have emotional connections to the liturgy with which we worship. That is part of being a human being. We're body-soul composites. Part of our physical nature is having emotional connections to things. Now we have to make sure that those emotional connections do not overrun our reason, but they are good nonetheless of themselves. What we do with them, on the other hand, and whether they're in accord with right reason, is another matter. Anyway, and just to throw this out there, I am not a traditionalist. I do not attend the Latin Mass regularly. I attend a Novus Ordo Mass regularly. Occasionally, I will attend a Byzantine Rite Mass. It's kind of my refuge, and that's sad to say that the main form of the Roman Rite makes a lot of people, myself included, it makes us cringe. Now, I'm not saying that the rite itself makes me cringe. It's certain ways in which the rite is practiced or said. The music that goes along with it oftentimes makes me cringe, very much so. And I hope maybe to get into this during this podcast, maybe another one on why that is, and a theory behind why the church has said in her official documents that music should be of the type of Gregorian chant, polyphony, and organ-based music, and not something like pop music or guitar or drum sets or whatever it may be. And it's not just the instruments, it's the type of music that's being played and the way in which it's being played. Okay, I'll talk about that more in a future episode, because I haven't worked it all out yet. I've been trying to talk with some people that I know who are very musically inclined and also very musically educated, and trying to parcel these things out, because I'm musically inclined, and I have a basic understanding of things like music theory, but not in an in-depth sense in order to really be able to comment on this stuff yet. I just have a sense of it, and I'm trying to figure out why I have this sense, because I think it is rooted in something. If I were to set out 3 desires for changes I could see in the Novus Ordo liturgy within the next 10 to 20 years, it would be, I think they would be in this order. It would be, first off, changes in music. Getting to a much more reverent, traditional hymnody, getting to a much more reverent and traditional type of music that stresses the type of tones that are in Gregorian chant or polyphony, Baroque polyphony, things of that nature, and gets rid of all modern types of tones. And I mean modern not in the sense of time, but modern in the sense of genre, okay? Also, anything that is sing-songy, if you know what I mean, that, in my opinion, should not be part of the liturgy. And I'm trying to figure out, like I said, why these things are not just opinions of mine. I think they are rooted in something, because beauty is real, as I've talked about. Beauty is real. It is something that can be striven towards. It has things that make it up. There are parts of something that, when they're all there, that thing is beautiful. Whether it's something to look at, like visual art, or auditory art. So first would be music. Second would be a changing of the position of the celebrant to an ad orientem position. Now, I've had multiple conversations with people on both sides of this issue, and I am convinced that there really is no precedent for a versus populum stance. So a stance of where the people are facing the priest and the priest is facing the people. I do not think that there is any evidence in history of this. Now, people will retort. They will say, well, what about all the churches in Italy and more ancient churches like in Spain and things too, where they were government buildings before of the Roman Empire, and an altar wasn't built against the wall, so they do have a freestanding altar, and these buildings were not built facing the east because the church inherited them. She did not build them. So they were facing whatever direction they were facing. Well, from what I understand, and it is true, facing east, ad orientem, literally, was the position that would be given, and that was the priority. It wasn't that everybody. It wasn't that the priest faces with his back to the people, and the people face the priest back. It wasn't the main priority. But it was the priority that everyone stand in the same direction towards the east. So if a church was not facing an easterly direction, what would happen is the priest would face east. So let's say the front doors of the church where everybody walks in is facing east. So the priest would be in a position that would be ad orientem. He would also be in a position that we today would think of as versus populum. But the difference is that the people would also face in the same direction as the priest. So basically, it'd be like, like the Charlton Heston movies, when the one about Moses, the Exodus, where he's in the galley of the ship, and there's the guy in the back, and he's drumming, to the beat, and they're all rowing at the same time. It would be like that, where the priest is like the guy giving the beat, and everybody is facing the same way. He's in the back, though. So the priest is facing the people's back. The people have their back to the priest. So the people don't even see anything at that point. The people are facing what we would consider the front doors of the church. They're not even facing the altar. And also you had things like rood screens and all this kind of stuff that developed quite early on, like in the 3rd or 4th century, 4th or 5th centuries. These things developed, which really blocked the people from even seeing what was going on. And they did this to kind of be like the shroud in the temple that was torn. They did this so it would image the Holy of Holies. And then lastly, I would more. I'm not the kind of person that would say we have to go back to all Latin. Would I be disappointed if we did? No, I'd be quite happy if we went back to all Latin. I have always wanted to go to a Novus Ordo Mass in Latin. I've never gotten the opportunity. Quite rare, but there's no reason you can't say them anyway. So those would be my 3 principles for the next 10 to 20 years for liturgy, I would say. First, we need to reform the music. Second, we need to reform the stance of the president. And likewise, this will help the stance physically and spiritually people as well, because I can get into this more later, because the stance of the president is incredibly important for the worship. It is incredibly, basically, because otherwise, if you do a versus populum like we do today, it becomes like an internal, like a feedback loop almost. Spirit would happen. Anyway, and then the 3rd thing would be to gain, and Greek for that.